Alrighty, I think we are good to get started here. So I just want to come out first and say thank you for everyone who's hopping on right now. I'm sure for all of you at home, you've probably been on at least 10 to 15 webinars in the last couple of weeks with all the things out there going on and not much else to do outside. So really appreciate you taking some time on a Friday, getting close to the weekend with, at least for me, beautiful weather outside. So thank you again. For any of you that are returning to our webinars who have maybe seen some of our smarter based ones with different topics around like electronic medical records or training load or athlete monitoring, thank you. Thanks for coming back and having more interest. And then if you are somebody who's brand new and this is your first webinar with us, I welcome you too. This is actually my first time hosting for us, so I'm a bit excited to talk about some of the things I have for you today. So with that, I just want to make note too. I have two of my colleagues on with me, with Charles Pa, who he'll be muted and have his camera off, but just in case we have any technical difficulties or a Wi-Fi issue with Zoom or something, he can surely hop into and keep things moving for all of you. So with that, this is our webinar today. We're going to be talking a little bit about linear speed testing and training and some of the ideas around that, as well as reactive agility training, and with a theme around our Smartspeed timing systems, which is kind of the topic of today. So with that, let me kind of just introduce myself a little bit here, and to kind of kick things off, if you're someone hopping on who's never met me. Again, my name is Alex Campanella. I've been with the company for going on 3 years now, with Fusion Sport in a specific role as being one of our Smartspeed consultants. So with that, I have the privilege every day to work with a variety of different people who are in elite sporting environments, university environments, high school, training youth athletes, private sector, research, you name it. And we actually are able to integrate a Smartspeed system in all those different ways to kind of help people meet their needs. With that, before my time in Fusion Sport, I was actually a track and field athlete. I went to school in Chicago, DePaul University, Big East School. I ran track there. And in the last 2 years, I've also had the privilege of finishing up my master's degree and being a graduate assistant coach. So the reason I bring that up, and just to kind of background on myself, between all those different ventures, being an athlete, coaching, as well as my role here with Fusion Sport and a lot around human performance and sports training, again, I see a lot of different things in a lot of different areas. So with that, there's tons of different ways to approach training, approach testing, and approach working with athletes. And regardless if it's a professional team or a youth coach, what I find to be the case is that all these coaches have a much more amount of success when they're starting to find ways to engage that athlete more and drive their intent. This is separate from the specific sciences and practices that are around how to train, how to periodize, how to implement different types of things into an environment. But what can you do in your environment with the tools and solutions and knowledge you have to drive their engagement? So as we go through this today, remember the theme of all this, even I'm going to go into a couple specific topics. The theme is around, again, how can I apply some of these ideas into shaping an environment that drives athlete intent and athlete engagement? So today, just quick hits. As we go through this presentation, and I won't bore you too much, we're going to be talking a little bit about timing action to tee things off. Testing accuracy, timing accuracy, what's the value of that? A little bit about how our Smartspeed timing systems will get you there, and we'll touch on that briefly. We're just going to use that more as an example of applying some of these concepts. And then we'll go right into speed and acceleration and testing, training, some reactive agility and cognitive agility types of protocols. And then, when we collect all this data, what can we do with it? How do we use it? Again, how can we improve our athletes and get them engaged? So again, I'm just going to hit this one more time. Again, with all these different concepts, the theme is about the athlete. It's always about the athlete. And I think that's one clear thing a lot of the successful coaches I'm around remember. Again, what are we doing to drive engagement? And that's the question I'd like you to ask yourself today. How can we drive engagement? How can we drive their intent? And really, where can we improve their environments? And then what tools, technologies, ideas can we use to make sure that happens and achieve that goal? And just briefly too, if you're new to Fusion Sports or you're new to Smartspeed specifically, I wanted to show this briefly just to give you a sense of the type of people we're working with. You might notice a lot of notable brands in the NBA or MLB or even NFL spaces who use our timing gates, and a couple notable brands in the leading sport around the world, in Europe, Australia, Asia Pacific. But there's a lot of other customers we have in private sector spaces, youth spaces. And the reason I want to say that is because regardless of where you are in your professional career with working with athletes, there's a place that Fusion Sport has a service to help you. And we have a lot of different opportunities to help people at different levels achieve those same goals, which are around driving that athlete engagement and really enhancing an environment that they're working in. See me there. So to kind of kick it off right away, let's backtrack just a little bit and talk about the sciences. And this is probably the only really technical science piece I want to talk about today. So if you're a coach and you're testing your athletes, timing accuracy, particularly as the theme of this, is brutally important. I think it goes without saying that most people know that. And most people know that hand timing and other solutions that aren't validated resources is not the way to go about it. If you're a coach, I'm sure you've even said or had someone say to you at some point in your career, if you can't test it, it's not worth it, or something along the lines of, we to validate what you're doing, you have to test it, you have to track it, which has a lot of truth to it. And we see a lot of successful people with that mentality. But really, if you really can't confirm the accuracy and give the most valuable data back to that athlete, there really is no use to do it. So interestingly enough, with the research we find, astoundingly, with people who in a sprinting or timing scenario actually hand time and act like it's not a big deal, they're usually seeing about 7 to 10% margin of error in their testing. That is astronomical. If you're someone who's prepping someone for a combine, a track athlete, things of that nature, that is completely blind, and that doesn't give you any guide to where you're going with training. Even with other systems, with other technologies, even some other timing systems, you might see a little bit better improvement of 5%, but that's still a huge margin of error over under. Think about that though. In these cases, you could be telling an athlete that they're getting faster when they might actually be getting slower. And even worst case, if you're training your athlete correctly, things are clicking, the fitness coming together, they're improving, and your timing errors tell them they're getting slower. What does that do for their mentality, all the hard work they're putting in with you, and what we can go ahead and do there? So again, think about this as a theme for regardless of which route you go with some of these examples today, it's got to be accurate. We have to do that quickly. One solution to that is something that Smartspeed, our timing system, uses, which is called error correction processing. It's an algorithm developed that will really differentiate between the different breaks inside of a beam when you're sprinting through it to make sure the timing is as accurate as possible. When we stack that up against other timing systems, we use Smartspeed using that error correction processing model, we still see as maximum accuracy as possible in a timing system, in that realm without having to go to a motion capture system in a lab. So other systems like uncorrected single beam systems, so one beam you're running through each split, or even a dual beam system, which helps a little bit, but doesn't get you quite there. Time and time again, we're seeing this is the way that we can consistently make sure that that data is accurate, and we can actually use it to apply to our training, our decision-making as we move forward. And just a little bit more on error correction processing. This is a brief diagram I like to show to help people understand what it really is. So this is the timing gate, right? And looking at this little graphic here, what it's showing is every time someone is sprinting through a timing gate beam on a Smartspeed system, it's catching the timestamp of their forward hand, then their torso, then their trail hand, right? What the system knows to do is to take your split time from the first instance of the longest break or longest amount of time something's obstructing that beam. That'll always be your torso center of mass. So with this diagram, we're showing how that first instance of that frontal plane of your torso, that's where we're getting our times from. And again, that's the science, using software to back that to make sure the data is as accurate as possible. So again, once we've checked this box, then we can go ahead and say, okay, how do we use this correct data, and how can we use these solutions to create a better enhanced training environment for that athlete to maintain engagement, drive intent, to move forward. So just going to touch on this briefly here. And this is just primarily about Smartspeed as a solution to do this. And if you're new to this, I'll just go over this just so you're aware. We do have a range of different timing gates. Our Smartspeed PT model is the entry-level system. We typically see this a lot in high school settings or even basic research settings that are doing simple like straight line timing and things like that. our Smartspeed Lite model, which will go ahead and do a lot of multi-lane timing capabilities to expand on testing. We see this a lot of success with people in like a combine style of training environment and testing environments. And then our Smartspeed Pro system, which I'll have a lot of examples of today. That's kind of the system. If you've seen our content or other people's content, you'll see mostly these dates on there with pictures and video doing a lot of different things. Main reason I bring this up, if you're someone who's new and you're not sure where you fit or how do we get into this world of trying to collect data and test athletes accurately, all three of these are viable options. All three of these have error correction processing, are as accurate as the other. And again, we have options for different people in different situations. We know that. So just a quick hit here for you just to make sure that you're aware of this. All right. So with that, again, we talked a little bit about the theme being athlete engagement, driving intent, and creating a more holistic picture of what you want to do with your athlete. Now what I want to do is switch into some specific examples that we can provide with a Smartspeed system. And my objective here is to give you an idea, with or without Smartspeed, how can I maybe create some of these models in my own training environment when we all can get back to working with our athletes, and hopefully apply to give them a better environment to train, collect more accurate data to make decisions, and really, make it more fun. Give what sport's supposed to be is the enjoyable effect of training, competing, and applying what you're doing. So we're going to start really simple and kind of build up as we go. The first thing I want to talk about is just sprint testing and linear sprinting as a whole. So as I mentioned earlier, everybody's doing this, and you really should be doing this because everyone should know how fast someone is from the time they start training to another phase to another phase. However, your end time is not everything. As much as seeing what that velocity is over a specific distance is a good way to monitor improvement, there's more to be said from doing sprint testing. Something as simple as just taking multiple split times in a sprinting series, whether it's running, even on a bicycle, you can use our timing gates, things like that, in a wheelchair, even in wheelchair sports as well as Paralympics. That's a really good thing to know, is split to split what you're doing. If you were to ask any NFL coach looking at an athlete in the 40-yard dash at the NFL Combine, they'll tell you they care a lot more, not just what your 10 is, your 10-yard split, your 20-yard split, and your 40-yard finish, but how are you transitioning from split to split? This tells a lot for a coach who's doing a lot of speed development training. Where does my attention need to go in their training? So to kind of just generalize that a little bit more, the big advantage is, number one, getting accurate sprint data in any field-based sport. You need to just know what top-end velocity is for that athlete. You should, regardless of what their position is. But again, using split times to give you ways to look at rates of acceleration, and even in cases like sprinters and track running 100 meters or more, rates of deceleration too, looking at biomechanical effectiveness, things like that. There's a lot to be said by just simply collecting such a simple metric of data. Another thing I want to hit on very quickly with this, as I have highlighted in a bullet here, is our force velocity profiling feature, the system which takes this even a step further of really breaking down each zone of a force velocity curve of someone's sprint. And then again, the coach being able to see which training periodization models are working, what should I apply, and where can I go with this? So again, simple test here, but so much value in sprint testing. And regardless of what you're doing, it's a very, very valuable metric to keep as a test moving forward. But again, use this drill as a way of saying, how can I engage my athlete? How can I get them to get more out of what they're doing and see that value? Just a quick example here, and again, with the theme of the NBA Combine would be coming up soon. We are on staff every year with the NBA Combine to help conduct their testing and a couple different assessments. So I thought I'd pull this video up quick to give you an example of an athlete going through a sprint test using a Smartspeed system with this setup. And again, it's a simple test, but creating that environment with the tools like this and the accuracy of data you can get creates a whole different type of environment for an athlete to execute on a test like that. Here's a quick example there for you if you've never seen our timing gates. All right, so let's look a little bit deeper. Another key thing with athlete training, again, when we're creating an engagement in an intent-driven environment, any skill or field-based sport has reactive agility elements to it. So these next couple things I'm going to walk through, we're going to talk a lot about, reactive agility, change of direction, and using that as something to not only, give the athletes something to do when they're training, but also collect specific data specific to the load and the positioning of how you'd be cutting and making decisions to monitor progress, right? If I'm coaching someone like a wide receiver and we're working on running routes at a very specific detail, I might want to know how well on different cuts, different loads from their hip to their ankle in different scenarios, how quickly we can make those decisions in specific types of routes. That helps me as a coach plan the way my offense can be formatted with my different types of receivers again. So this first example here called the cut drill, the purpose is around using our timing gates to, again, the lights on our pro gates, which give you that visual aesthetic or even an audio cue on your ear to see a stimulus, make that decision, and then appropriately run to that gate. So in this very simple diagram that I have here, you'll see there's a start gate where my starting flag is. I'd run through that start gate, and in this basic example, I have 1, 2, or 3 different options of a gate that might go off, or either I would cut left, cut right, or sprint through. Think about this setup right here as simply for a running back drill for football, right? Cutting through different holes, a play collapses, making a quick decision. Even though this isn't that same head-to-head practice scenario that a player might see with practicing with the offensive line in full game, which I would never encourage not doing that, we can start to create, different types of ideas that we can get the same anticipation, but then again, really make sure we can see exactly what's going on. So with all that, I just want to make sure that that's kind of clear. And again, one other quick hit I would say is return to play protocols I have not mentioned yet. Return to play is as a key thing that I look at a lot with using tools for engagement. Any athlete that was been injured and coming back into play, you want to give them different types of stimuluses that they maybe can't do with their teammates to make sure they're motivated in their process as well. And something like this, I find to be quite successful with a lot of our customers. Just to give you 2 examples of that, I do have a couple of videos here featured from a customer of ours and a great friend of Fusion Sport with Explosive Sports Academy. Trey Tolliver, owner and director there, is very, very passionate about creating different styles of agility drills to train his athletes, and just want to show a couple different examples there of what he's done. So this left video I'm showing here, this athlete here is completing a running back series, kind of similar to what I showed. It's pretty cool. Again, using the lights at the gates to force decision-making and reactive agility, again, mimicking that load of a game. And in this example here, we got some field hockey athletes doing a kind of different setup, but the same exact drill, which is really, really nice. Excellent. So with that, we can move on to next thing here, which is our grid drill. So kind of taking it a step further with reactive agility testing. This drill here is really more about a 360. Sorry, I lost my screen there. This drill here is more about a 360 type of scenario of full athlete awareness. So keeping that theme of athlete engagement and creating intent, something like this creates a really cool environment and a really unique environment to make sure that an athlete is, understanding the full length of the field, both audio and with your eyes cognitively, making the right decisions, but can even be used as a fitness tool, a fatigue testing tool. Getting an athlete really tired in training and then commencing a drill like this mimics end of game type of decision making, which is really, really important. But also for multi-team training, which is pretty cool. Again, this example I'll show here with Exos, one of our partners. They're actually doing a multi-athlete assessment tier to, again, give some competitiveness to team training. Again, they're having fun, we're driving intent, they're gaining value out of this, and we're still collecting data. We're still monitoring improvement to see if things are working or not based on what we're doing. Really cool example here, very powerful drill, and I can speak for all these drills, they're very powerful because Smartspeed gives you the ability to take a drill platform like this, use a variety of settings and configure it to make it even different or more specific to what you want. And then one final thing I want to touch on real quick is the Pro Agility drill. This is one of the last drills we'll show for today. So why I bring this up, number one, Pro Agility is, or the 5-10-5 shuttle is normally called, is one of the most simple agility test that is commonly used in sports at any level. And especially because it's giving you an idea of how an athlete can completely stop in a drill and make a decision and change direction. So the cool thing about this drill too is that in our world, it only needs one timing gate or one Smartspeed gate to do it. So if you're someone who just wants to time some linear sprints and maybe something like this, some basic level training, this provides a lot of value. And again, a very simple way to do it and with not a lot of equipment necessary. Taking it a step further, one assessment that we commonly use at the NBA Combine for assessing, but really can be used in any scenario, is our reactive pro agility. So now instead of just doing your normal 5-10-5 pattern where I start in a middle sequence, run out, touch 5 yards, sprint my next 10, sprint through the middle, I actually have the ability to do the same exact drill, but I'll have either a left or right stimulus to react to. So again, really, really interesting here and a good way to, move ahead and make sure that, we're still doing that movement pattern, we're still achieving that drill, but we're getting reaction time, and we're looking at cognitive awareness, and we're making sure the athlete can make quick decisions when necessary. So this is another example from the NBA Combine last year in our G League testing. This athlete's performing this reactive pro agility. So as you can see, he's lined up here in the middle. There is a solid green light that he's waiting for that tells him to stay in the middle line. Either this left gate, which you can see closely, and then far on the right, there's another gate in his peripherals. He'll recognize the LED light flashing from the gate, then immediately make a decision to go to that gate, get the reaction time, and then finish the drill as normal. So that right gate goes off, he cuts, finishes the drill as normal. And again, in a basketball setting, it's actually shrunk down to the key. But again, you could do this over a normal 5-10-5 and still do the same exact protocol in a football setting, in a combine setting. So again, with all these drills, we're taking a spin on, okay, these are some ground floor examples, but how can something like this apply to my athletes? And that's the question I would have for you. How can this, create, better ways to collect data, more enjoyable way for them to train, and something that's a little bit outside the box of the monotony of daily skill training and practices that you'd see in a team-based sport. So again, really good examples here. And just real quickly, that was only 3 examples of videos I showed. There are tons of other things that Smartspeed at least offers in drills. So the serpentine drill, traffic light sprints, really useful with visual reactive starts. A lot track athletes, we have a lot of success with that. But even in like a research or just a pure testing standpoint, you can still do intermittent phosphate testing, fully automated pacing like a beep or yo-yo test. I mentioned it earlier, but multi-lane timing as well to do multi-athlete assessments simultaneously. That also increases the ability to do, more athletes at once. But even more importantly, again, that's in a team sport environment, very simple method to increase the validity and the intent of the athlete of giving them their best assessment possible. So really interesting there as well. And again, just to give you an idea, this doesn't stop with a couple examples I presented today. There's plenty of others. And after this webinar today, if anyone wants to reach out and talk a little bit more about these other examples, I'm more than happy to do so. So let's back up for just a second. And this is where I'm going to dive a little bit more specifically into Smartspeed. So all the examples I just showed were drills performed by Smartspeed systems, but some of the questions you might have now are, how do I execute this? How does the system work if we were to do this with Smartspeed? And then also, my question for you is, you're collecting this data, what are you going to do with it? How will this help you make a decision? The beauty of Smartspeed is that it's a completely wireless system, but it's all operated very simply using our Smartspeed mobile app. So very simply connecting your system via Bluetooth to a phone or tablet, Android, iOS, whatever. You can actually go right into the system, very, very quickly get into a drill and start testing. That data is then collected and stored locally in the device. It's also pushed into what's called Smartspeed Online, which I'll go into in a little bit, our cloud-based reporting system for you to use free, just to make sure you can have all the data and make decisions on it. So before we go into that, what I'll show you quickly, this clip here I recorded of me running a basic 10-yard sprint test with a couple athletes. Now in this video, I've already set up the gates, turned the system on, took about 5 minutes. But in this clip, I want you to see in a matter of seconds, me going through all of these screens in the Smartspeed mobile app to then show you I'm going to pick my drill, pick my athletes, assign the gates, and then complete a 10-yard sprint. So as you can see there, in a matter of probably 20 seconds, I've operated the system, turned it on, and commenced automated testing with all these players. So, and again, keeping to the theme of athlete engagement, having something like this where you're taking less time to actually set up a drill and use technology, attention span of young athletes and patience is definitely a factor, and something I definitely see. The quicker we can get into something, quicker we can get out, the more effective it can be. So this is a quick example there of the mobile app, and just from the front end perspective of how you actually operate it, this would be helpful for you here. So next, let me kind of change gears here, and I'm actually going to go ahead and show you the inside of Smartspeed Online. So as I mentioned previously, Smartspeed Online is the free cloud portal that is accessible for any Smartspeed user. Technically, even if you didn't have Smartspeed Gates, you could make a free account and then manually import testing data if you have it in say, a CSV environment. If there's any Smarter-based users on the call today, architecturally, some of this might look a little familiar and how we've set this up. But the point of what I want to show you today is, again, we're keeping this theme of engagement intent and what you do with data. It has to go somewhere where you can action it quickly and then use that to inform your decision-making. So this is the front landing page of Smartspeed Online, just to have a quick look. And on their sidebar here, automatically every single type of drill you could do with a Smartspeed system or even if you edited your results in CSV and imported them, they would land in these different types of folders. So if I was to come in here and show you a couple different tests, I might go to a one-way timing sprint test, click on that, load that up. And then, here's that same session that I actually did this morning. I just showed you living inside this Smartspeed Online environment. So whether you want to work with it in here or extract it very simply, with a matter of a couple clicks, I could take this out into Excel and then, run other calculations or things I might want to do with that as well. So obviously, number one point is storing your data and putting it in here and then being able to action it for yourself, drive intent, drive engagement. We can also edit and add a team list here, configure your own protocols that are specific to what you need to do. There's a couple other visual features as well. So just wanted to stop real quick and give you a look at that as where this all can happen. But furthermore, kind of get back in the presentation here for a second. So the big point too is obviously using visuals as a way to, again, do something with this data. A couple examples we'll go through today is around our athlete report card, but we do have a couple sprinting and jumping session dashboards that are used for group analysis among a specific set of sessions with sprinting or jumping using our Smart Jump mat as well. So with that, first example here is our athlete report card dashboard. A little bit of a hidden visual here, I do apologize. But what I want to say with this is that this is a really, really cool example in our world, but again, could be recreated somewhere else easily as well. Giving an athlete physical, visual piece of information they can see. Again, how does that affect adding engagement? How does that affect in driving their intent? In this example here, we made a metric for looking at jump height assessment and monitoring an athlete's ability in a vertical jump over the course of all their history, 6 months, 3 months, whatever, in comparison to another player on their team or the team average. So if I'm in a team coaching environment, or if I'm in a private sector working with the same group of kids week in, week out, something, monthly, weekly, quarterly, to show them the validity of how they're improving, such a simple thing to digest as information, but can, again, remotivate, drive intent, answer questions, and help the athlete get more out of what they're talking about. And then just specifically one other specific dashboard feature within Smartspeed Online is our force velocity profiling dashboard. I did briefly go over this in my slide about linear sprinting and what this does. If you're a coach who's new to the concept of force velocity profiling, what it equates to is actually using a sloped force velocity curve to assess different zones within horizontal sprint production. Now it includes strength, strength power zone, pure power, power velocity, and full velocity. So these, and for most coaches using a periodized method to their training, this can provide you a good segmented approach of what are the areas or key areas that I should address my training to with a specific athlete. I won't dive too much into this now, but I will say this is one of my favorite things that I love to talk about with coaches, and is a really, really useful tool. Other thing too is we will probably plan to do a follow-up webinar specific to this topic, which I love to talk about. So keep that in mind for yourself too. If you have questions about this feature and what we might be able to do with it, and we can talk a little deeper about the concept, the research, and how it can be applied to horizontal speed training. So yeah, just a kind of quick overview there. I don't want to make things too complicated. Again, this is less about, the science of things and less about the specifics of data. But again, I hope today what I went over with you briefly can really give you an idea around a couple of ideas and examples of what might make sense in your environment to get a little more engagement out of your athletes, help them to want to get the most intent and focus out of what they're doing, make it a little fun, and also get a good amount of data out of it. So just to recap briefly on what we discussed so far, just as we started with, timing accuracy is a must. Any data accuracy is a must if you're testing something and using it for information. But again, something like error correction processing, a feature unique to Smartspeed, is a good way, and it's very useful to make sure that, okay, if we're going to collect this data, we can trust it's going to always be accurate. Key thing there. With linear sprinting, and as I mentioned a little bit earlier, think bigger than just, what's my athlete's time in a 40, something like that. Start to collect split times if you're not. Think about how those different splits and where acceleration is going. And these are things that Smartspeed particularly can calculate. Use that to guide your decision-making and training. Is it starting at a work with? Is it accelerating? Is it maintaining max velocity? Again, what are the needs of the athlete in their situation? And then again, with reactive agility training and reactive elements to training, again, the value here is take a building block approach with some of the examples I showed. How can I configure some sort of test that's unique to what we're doing that can, again, make sense, put an athlete in the type of physical load they might be doing, and then go ahead, obviously, and ensure that we're actually adding value to what they want, and they're enjoying and getting intense out of what we're doing. As I just briefly showed, monitoring that, something like Smartspeed Online is a very, very simple tool to have data stored in one place and start to extrapolate it and make decisions. So using monitoring to improve, monitor improvements over time, but also using data to show the athlete where they're going and drive their intent. But as I keep saying over and over this whole presentation, our objective here is engage the athlete. And again, what can we do as coaches and as professionals with all these athletes at different levels, regardless, elite, youth, whatever? How can we make sure that theme is about them driving their intent as much as possible? So with that, that's pretty much it for me. And I hope I didn't bore you guys too much today. I'm very passionate about these topics and what we talk about. So I appreciate your time with me today with all these. Again, as I mentioned, as force velocity profiling was a specific example. With other topics and other key things I went over today, we are looking to have more webinars more specific to each individual topic. We could spend 25, 30 minutes just on that and dive deeper if you're curious. But with that, look out for other webinars around Smartabase and things we're doing there. And if you ever have questions or just curious about some things I might have seen in my experience or have examples that you find interesting you'd love to share with me, I do have my contact info available. There's a Twitter handle there. You can DM me whenever you want, my work email as well as my mobile. So please feel free to reach out anytime. We do have a couple minutes left here, so I just kind of wanted to leave the floor open for any questions that might pop up.
So Alex, we had somebody in the audience actually ask, have we ever tried sprint testing utilizing it for wheelchair athletes?
Yeah, great question. And I actually gets brought up a lot with wheelchair cyclists, other unique things that aren't sprinting. The timing gates are very versatile. We can use them in different ways. That's actually an opportunity where I might actually want to turn my error correction processing feature off, which is a feature you can toggle within the system. If I turn it off, what happens is whatever that first instant is, it could be the front tire wheel of the wheelchair or a bike or whatever else, Still makes it even more accurate and make sure it's accurate for that specific sport. So we can surely use it in that environment. I mean, you could even technically do it with a car if you wanted to, which is a very unique use case, but surely a possibility. That's a really good question.
And another one, Alex, I think that a lot of people skip over this originally when they're looking at timing gates. But, well, how easy is this to set up? I think that's one of the things that coaches always have limited to them, right, is time with the athletes. So how simple is this to set up and use?
Yeah, great question. So as I showed in that very short clip in the presentation, that was me actually did a screen recording on my phone from the software into the app. So from that process of operating the system within the app, that was a matter of 15 seconds to get into a drill and get testing. Depending on what you're doing, how many gates you have, right? The more equipment you have, it's more time for setting up. But it's really as simple as, setting up the simple, like our system, setting up the simple tripods that are given, placing those gates on those tripods. Same process for putting a tripod and reflector together, turning it on, aligning it, setting them up on the measured markers, whatever drill you're doing. And then, repeating that process that I showed you within the app of clicking a few things. So average user of our customers have typically a 4-gate system to do a couple of different things. That user typically is probably going to have about a 5 to 7 minute setup time. So if you're someone concerned about making sure that this isn't take your whole time to set up to use in a training session, definitely will be effective for you to make sure that timeline is really short, 5 to 7 minutes max. Turn it on, connect it via Bluetooth to the app, and get going, right? You're testing.
Perfect. Thanks, Alex. And that actually leads me into my second question that I got from the audience. So, we talked a little bit about Smartspeed Online, and I think you actually briefly touched over this, but how easy is it to get the data from the devices themselves into Smartspeed Online? Is that like an automatic process? Is that a manual process? Like, how does that work?
Yeah. So with our system, every time you do a test, as soon as you finish it, it actually will automatically store that data locally in device, and automatically push it into Smartspeed Online. So within seconds, you did the test, you finished it, it's in that environment. I could literally finish testing my mobile device, turn to my computer, turn on Smartspeed Online, and the data's there to work with. If you're someone who is not using Smartspeed, but you decided you really can use Smartspeed Online and uploaded it, a couple clicks there to push that manual data in. But with our Smartspeed system, it automates that process. So you have the data collected automatically, and you can action on it automatically in Smartspeed Online.
Definitely. That's a great explanation on how that process works on our side. We have a few other questions. So how does the system work in like various weather conditions? Have we ever had any experience with that? Rain, snow, in the heat. Any experience with that on your end?
Yeah, good question. Specific to Smartspeed, I always tell people I wouldn't throw those gates into a pool. I wouldn't throw them down 7 flights of stairs. However, I would definitely say that they're extremely water resistant. I myself have been on football field and combines for 12 hours straight, 40 degrees and raining, not stopping at all. Battery lives are extremely strong on our timing gates, but yeah, extremely durable with very tense acrylic tubing. Very water resistant as well for heavy rain. And then, you're an effective temperature range from about negative 14 degrees Fahrenheit to about 114, 115 degrees Fahrenheit as well. Temperature's a factor.
It's great. It sounds like you've been in a number of different various weather conditions to kind of experience that. So it's great. One of the last questions that we have on our end is, and I can answer this is, how to get a copy of this webinar, because I think you went through a lot of content and some of the attendees themselves might just want to review it. So what we will do on our side is actually make sure that we actually send a copy of this webinar. We do have this recorded. Send this copy of this webinar over to you guys. So if you guys wanted to review this information, pass it over to anybody else, you'll have that opportunity as well. Perfect. Well, hey, thanks, Alex. Thanks for taking the time to go through this and kind of allow us to poke your brain for the knowledge that you have within the system itself. Do you have any last minute things you want to talk about, Alex?
That's it. Again, I appreciate everyone's time today, end of the week, and I'm sure you're listening to a lot of webinars. So look out for more content coming out from us. As Charles said, we'll make sure the content specific to this webinar will be sent to you guys. But surely, look out for other things we're going on where we actually have all our previous webinars also recorded and saved on our YouTube channel. So if you go to Refusion Sport YouTube channel, There's a playlist specifically for our webinar, so you can actually go there, hop in, listen to them there, any other topics we might have been discussing over the last few weeks. So thank you again. Appreciate your time. Everyone have a great, safe weekend, and we'll see you soon.